Shalom Aleichem. Erev Shabbos, Pashas Vayechi, Tovshim Pei Daled. This week is Chazak, Chazak V'Niz Chazek. We conclude and we finish Sefer Bereshis, Bezos Hashem. If you listened to the Shir last week, we mentioned that perhaps we're going through something called emotional overloading. There's tremendous stress. We go from one mood to another mood, and it's a tremendous trial. It's a trauma which people are going through. I think in the following way, before the October 7th Maisa happened in Gaza, we were at Sukkot, and Sukkot the Man Simchosenu, Chag Someach, and everybody sat in their sukkah with a holy Ushpizin, and at night we hopped around here in Eretz Yisrael from one Simchas Beis HaShoeva to another. And we looked forward, everybody looks forward to Simchas Torah, something like the gasoline of Simcha for the whole year. And then eventually it turned round with horror, and it turned out to be like a replica out of the Shoah, out of the Holocaust, Lo Aleinu, with tremendous tragedy and overwhelming heartbreak which happened after it. And you go from one mood to another mood. And really, I don't think it's really finished either. We're going through in this particular situation the enormous tsar of the hostages which are still being kept there in Gaza. And the cholim in Klal Yisrael, the people who are sick, and then people who are maimed as well, Lo Aleinu, Chas v'Sholem. The Avelim, the Almonos and the Yesomim, the widows and the orphans and the families who were devastated from the loss of so many soldiers, and in particular also the Chayalim who are standing on the border there and looking after us and protecting our safety and giving up their lives, Lo Aleinu, Chas v'Sholem. And those people who are sent out of their homes. I know my own family is sitting in a hotel in Netanya somewhere as well. The enormous tsar and that tremendous tzara of Klal Yisrael. On the other hand, you see tremendous simcha, not tremendous simcha, but let's say humble elation, which we have, meaning there are nisim, there are miracles which have happened in Klal Yisrael. People were saved in the most phenomenal way, and there's a great awakening in Klal Yisrael for tshuva. Many people have asked for tefillin and tzitzis and are keeping Shabbos for the first time in their lives, and some people said it's the first time they ever prayed in their lives, and that's in some way gives elation and humble appreciation to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the enormous hashgacha pratis which is going on. And therefore you have something like, as we mentioned last week, almost like a roller coaster. You go from one mood to another mood, from a high to a low, and it can be traumatic for people in certain ways. You hear wonderful news of people who are saved, or people who tell their stories, which you see very often here in Israel, and the clips which are going around. On the other hand, you think about the hostages. You wake up in the morning and you think of all those people who are in tremendous tsar inside Gaza, and you go from one mood to another mood. And we suggested last week that perhaps this is the mood which the great maskil, the great thinker in Klal Yisrael, David HaMelech, explained really in Perek Lamed, which we say every day. Mizmar Shir Chanukas Habayis LeDavid. Chanukas is Meloshen Chinuch, from an education. If you look at the Perek 30 in Tehillim, you see David HaMelech goes through different moods. Hafachta Mizbid L'Mochali, Pitachta Saki Badzvein. At night I'm in Tsar, in the morning I'm in Simcha. And you go, that's life. That's really the education which David HaMelech is teaching us in that Perek. But the key, which we brought last week, was the last pasuk. Lema'an, in all the challenges that you go through, from the highs to the lows. Yizamecha chovod. The chovod is a nickname for the neshama. Let it always sing. V'lo yidaim. It should never be dumb. It should never be silent. Hashem Elokai la'olam oideka. I will always be thankful. I will always be thankful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we said really, the forever thankful for the situation which we're going through. I think in some way, Lanias deity, that gives something called stability. If a person can always bear in mind the connection which you have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, La'olam oideka, of all that I'm going through, isn't that what David HaMelech meant there in that chapter, there in Tehillim? Meaning the challenges of up and down, the roller coaster from one mood to another mood. If you can remember always, La'olam oideka, I'll always give thanks to the Almighty. If you can do that, you can find a certain tranquility and stability in your life. Interesting, in another chapter in Perek 73 in Tehillim, Ayin Gimel, David HaMelech says it a different way. Vani kirvas Elokim ki tov. The best thing for me is my closeness to the Almighty. Hashem Elokai Machzi. The Almighty is my salvation. Lema'an yasaper kol malachosecha. I will always tell of your deeds. If you can do that, if you're able to find a certain tranquility and a stability when you make so many brachas during the course of the day, and we suggested that really brachas are really the key to finding that. You're making a bracha for food, you're making a bracha for a mitzvah, you're making a bracha of thanks, which we'll go through in a few minutes. If you're doing that, as Rav Steinman had said, which I mentioned in a previous year, of the time time when he came to Har Nof, I remember him saying that a person who says his brachas, 100 brachas a day, if you're careful about your brachas, you bring down the Shekhinah, the Almighty and the Divine Presence is in your setting, in your scenario. And that really is a tremendous help which is being brought here. And we mentioned that Rav Steinman had said 2 beautiful points. Remember, we mentioned that there was a plague in Eretz Yisrael and over 100 people were dying a day, and David was broken, distressed. And he was told people are being lax with their 100 brachas, meaning the care which has to be taken. Interesting, said Rav Steinman, it doesn't say that with the Baskol, the answer which David was given from Shemayim, his answer was, be careful with your brachas. It doesn't say about Talmud Torah, learning Torah. Talmud Torah is sort of the most preeminent, the most profound of all mitzvahs, Keneged Kulam. And Rav Steinman brought a beautiful point. Yes, but brachas are vital. Brachas are the connection which one has with the Almighty. And we suggested from that episode of the plague of David HaMelech that if one is careful with one brachas, you have divine protection, you have security from the Almighty. And he mentioned also a beautiful point as well, which really goes to back up and confirm, almost concrete, the idea of what Rav Steinman was bringing in the following way. Look carefully. The Pasuk tells us that a Megadef, a person who curses the Almighty, Lo Aleinu, he's punished with stoning, with skila, and Eino Chelik Lo Olam Haba. He has no portion in the world to come. Said Rav Steinman, if that's what happened to a person who curses, can you imagine the other way around? If a person gives a bracha, what security and protection and what a bracha he receives if he gives a bracha. If a person who gives a curse gives that, then obviously what happens to a person who gives a bracha, a fortiori, is even greater than that. And that's the point we brought out. The purpose of the Shir last week, just to go recap a little bit and then we'll go on to this Shir, is to try and give a mindset for all the brachas that we say, and hopefully a person will have a certain stability in all the moods, the highs and the lows, from Sukkot to Simchas Torah to what happened, from the tremendous tsar and the worry which we have, the anxiety for all the people who are going through tzaras, on the other hand the great miracles, the humble elation that we have. If you can be careful with your brachas, I'd like to suggest Lanias deity, then if you have a mindset for your brachas, then you can really carry it through in the course of the day. I must say, I myself, preparing this Shir and giving this Shir, I found tremendous inspiration myself, the different types of brachas which we're saying. We mentioned from the Rambam, there are 3 types of brachas. The first is called, let's say, a birchas ha-mitzvahs, meaning a birchas ha-mitzvahs which one says, Asher kiddushanu v'mitzvahs v'tzivanu al netilas yadayim la'asok b'divrei Torah. And we mentioned that the mindset for these sort of mitzvahs is as follows. The mindset is, on the individual side, Rabbi Alpren had mentioned that the minute you decide, you have an intention to do a certain mitzvah, you are presented with a certain or hagonos, with a tremendous light from Shemaim. When you complete the mitzvah in the individual way, said Rabbi Alpren, you get what's called an or on your ruach. Your ruach is motivated from one mitzvah to another mitzvah. That's on an individual scale. On a national scale, we mentioned the pasuk from the Novi Yeshaya, meaning b'shama lo yoshuv, the rain and the snow do not go back. You have to listen to the previous shir in order to pick up these points. I'm just recapping a little bit because I think it's helpful for this particular shir. The rain and the snow do not go back, but the bracha and the mitzvah do go back, meaning there is something called a cycle of tremendous prosperity and benevolence and care. When we are careful with our mitzvahs and our prayer, so the Almighty sends the metaphorical rain and snow, whatever the welfare is and the benevolence that we need. And that is the point, that the mindset behind a bracha for a mitzvah is the aura of Kedusha which a person has, and on top of that is the welfare and the benefit of Klal Yisrael. And we mentioned the beautiful line of Rabbi Salant, the yeshiva bracha in Vilna helps the business in Paris, but they never meet. No, but you should know the concept. The concept is Kol Yisrael arevim zeh bo zeh. There's a tremendous bond, a guarantee, and a connection from one to another, even though you might not meet, but you make tremendous welfare from one mitzvah to another, one person to another. That was the mindset which we gave for Birchas HaMitzvahs. Birchas HaNenin, for food, meaning before you eat something, Shehakon Yeh Bidvoroi, or Boyim Menei Mezonos, or after you finish something, a Boyim Nefoshos, or you bench, or Ala Michya. Those sort of brachas, we gave us a mindset as follows. The mindset was as follows. The Gemara in Brachas Daf Nun Ches. Oyach Toiv Mahu Oimer. What does a good guest say? We explained there's a good guest, a bad guest, and an ugly guest. If you listen to that, you'll find the point. A good guest said how much my host has done for me. And a bad guest said, my host did nothing for me. And an ugly guest thinks that he, after all, is the tzaddik. He is the one who's done it, because otherwise there will be such wastage. And we explained who's the host. The Borei Olam, the Almighty, is our host, and we are guests here. Meaning, whenever you eat something, think of yourself as being, hopefully, a good guest. You notice, you recognize, and therefore the bracha comes out with great intention and great sincerity. This particular shir moves on and looks now at the brachas of hodah, brachas of thanks. We mean as follows. You know, in the morning when you wake up, you say, Poker ivrim, I can open my eyes, I can stand up straight. Shelo asani goy, Hashem didn't make me into a goy. And all the beautiful brachas which you say. These are called brachas of thanks and appreciation and praise. Shechiyonu v'kiyamanu v'higiyonu is also a bracha of thanks. The first three brachas of Shemoneh Esrei until Hakel HaKodesh are really praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the last three as well. These are all called birchas hodah, brachas of thanks, of praise, and hallel as well. What's the mindset, Mini, which one should have? What should you think before you're saying a bracha of a birchas hodah? And maybe perhaps we can assume, and I don't know if it's a correct assumption, but if a person is careful of all the brachas of hodah, the brachas of praise and thanks, maybe there's a certain piety, there's a certain chasidus, a certain ability of a person who's careful. Maybe there's an assumption you can make. If you're careful with your birchas hashachar, the brachas which you say in the morning, or when you go to the bathroom as well after Asher Yotza, maybe there's a certain piety. You might assume that in the following way. Let me just add a beautiful point of the Abu Duraham. When the bracha we say Matir Asum, who releases the bonds, you might think it's talking about if you come out of prison and therefore the chains are released and you can move around normally. But the Abu Duraham says a beautiful point. A person who's able to use his legs properly, their legs are bound up, usually, but you can use them. A person who can smile, a person who can run, a person who can scream, a person who can see. If you can use your limbs in a normal way, that's called matir asurim, releases the bond. A child, namely, with special needs, or a child with autistic needs, he's bound up. He can't use all his limbs in the regular way. And therefore, when we say matir asum, who releases the bonds, my legs work normally, my hands work normally, my eyes and my speech works normally. That's called matir asurim. That's a beautiful point from the Abu Duraham. But this assumption, I think, can be dispelled in a certain way. And I'm coming really from a beautiful maimah, and really all of this shir is based on a maimah, on an exposition by the Alter from Kelm, Reb Simcha Zissel Ziv, who was the great Talmud, the great student of Rabbi Salant. Explained as follows. This assumption that we're making of when you're careful about saying a bracha of hodah, you're assuming maybe that's a certain piety. And the Alter suggests not necessarily so. Really, all these brachas which you're saying in thanks, for example, use the bathroom, or you say, I can stand up straight, or I can open my eyes, or I can hear, whatever they are, any bracha which is said of praise and thanks is really just a normal behavior. And the Alter suggests as follows. The Alter Fakam says in this beautiful way, really, it's just normal behavior to say thank you or to admire something which is very well done. And those are the two normal traits of behavior. The Alter explains from a posuk in Tehillim, Perek Mem, posuk Yud Beis. And the Alter says as follows. There's a posuk says, Ato Hashem, lo yisircha rachamecha mimeni. Hashem, you should never resist or limit or hold back in your mercy for me. Chastecha va'amitcha, your kindness and your truth, Tomid Yitzuni, will always guard me. And the Alter explains this. Chastecha means it's a normal trait to express a thanks. Amitcha is it's very well done. Everything which you do is it's perfect, it's excellent. The perfection of everything that you do. Amitcha means those two traits, your kindness and your excellence and your perfection, everything you do, will always guard me. And the Alter asks as follows, what is the connection from the beginning of the sentence to the end of the sentence, meaning from the Reishus to the Sefer? The first part of the sentence says, you should never resist your kindness, your mercy from me, because your kindness and your truthfulness, your excellence, will always guard me. What is the connection? If you can hold that in mind, again, the question is, what is the connection from not holding back or limiting your mercy from me, because your kindness and your excellence will always guard me? Let's explain a little bit, and we'll come back to explaining that sentence at the end of the shir. The Alter is suggesting as follows. Recognizing something which is very well done, admiring perfection is a normal human trait. And also expressing a thanks is a normal human trait. What I'd like to do, this is not what the Alter says, but I'd like to extend the idea in a certain way. I'd like to open your mind to this theory and then bring you back to the source of what the Alter is referring to. The Alter, maybe we can explain in the following way. Admiring something very well done is a normal human trait. Supposing you walked into a room and you see a beautiful painting or a beautiful picture. The normal thing to say, what a beautiful picture, what a view. It's normal. It's not necessarily a great quality of piety. You recognize, people normally recognize something which is very well done. No? If you walk into you see a person dressed very well. You're dressed very well. It's a normal thing to admire someone who's very well dressed, looks very good. If you walk past a building, I remember walking around Lakewood, sometimes with my wife, we go there sometimes for Pesach, and you walk in some of the houses, beautiful homes there, if you see a beautiful building, the normal thing is to stand back and admire, what a beautiful home, what a beautiful skylight, what a beautiful entrance lobby. The normal thing to do is admire something which is very well done. Let's start with this basis. When it comes to a professional, for sure, who doesn't admire the expertise and the excellence of a professional? I remember in London, this week was the yahrzeit of the great Dr. Adler in London in Golders Green, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. He was a phenomenal doctor, and there were stories about him, his genius, his ingenuity in prescription and prognosis for people who were sick. I remember when I was in Gateshead Yeshiva, I remember hearing about a certain bocher in Yeshiva who complained about his eyesight, and his eyesight was going dimmer and dimmer, and he had tremendous problems. He was brought down to London, and he was taken to the famous eye clinics in Harley Street, which is really a street of specialist medicine in London, and none of the doctors could find the problem at all. And he was complaining all the time, his eyesight is dimming and dimming, and he couldn't see properly. They suggested him, why don't you go into Dr. Adler? He went into Dr. Adler, he took one look at him, Dr. Adler, stared at him, and then went like this. He said, "You have dandruff," he said to him. "Your dandruff is getting in your eyes. Buy a special shampoo and you'll see." And immediately he was better. He saw past the problem. He saw immediately what the problem was. A phenomenal genius of a doctor to look at a person to realize what it was. It's really the dandruff which is going inside his eyes. And remember my mother, Aleha Shalom, we didn't live in London, but I remember she had a friend who was complaining terribly of a certain pain in her leg. So my mother, Aleha Shalom, suggested that you call up Dr. Adler and ask him, describe the problem to him. And the lady described the problem, she bought a certain cream, and immediately the problem went away. The man was an ingenious in medicine. His prognosis, his ability to diagnose something was phenomenal. You see something professional, something which is the normal way is to have tremendous esteem and admiration for something which is very well done. I don't know if you appreciate music, but I know there's something in music called a cadenza. You find that very often in the violin concertos. I think of Max Bruch and Beethoven. All of a sudden the violinist goes off by himself and plays by himself a phenomenal piece all by himself. There's a certain piece I remember in the music of Yanni, a piece of music called The Storm, and the violinist goes, it's a phenomenal thing. To watch somebody, a professional at work, is a beautiful, beautiful thing to see. The normal thing is to admire something very well done. Labdil Elef Abdullah as well. If you hear a wonderful shir, you turn around and say, what a wonderful shir. I was very fortunate when I came to live here in Amat Bet Shemesh. There was a Rav, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, a Gaon, Reb Chaim Zev Malinowitz, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. He would speak on Shabbos morning. I was breathtaking. It was phenomenal. His original thought, his presentation, it was incredible to listen to. He was so original, he was so well thought out, and the delivery was perfect. I went up to him every time and said, that was the most wonderful shir you said. You're taken by it, no? The normal reaction of a person is to admire something very well. I remember his shiurim were wonderful. His Shabbos morning droshes, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. I miss him terribly here in Mamat Bet Shemesh. Now, Rabbi say, here's the launch. Now let's move on. Now let's move on from Bein Adam Lachaveo to Bein Adam Lamokom, between ourselves and the Ribono Shel Olam, the Almighty. Rabbi say, I'd like to suggest as follows. I think this is what the Alter means here. When you say in the morning, Elokai neshama shenosatoni tohorati, that you gave me b'akron ofachton, you gave me the ability to breathe. Breathing is an incredible miracle. The ability to be able to breathe in and out, and the air stays in your body, even though there are so many holes all around your body. The ability to breathe is an incredible miracle. No, the Ribono Shel Olam, it's very well done. The ability to breathe is an incredible nace, incredible miracle. I remember hearing from the great Mashiach, Reb Don Segel, Shia Bari Shlita. He once explained to us in a shir that as a young boy, he had tremendous problems breathing. And he once went to a famous doctor in Hadassah, Ein Kerem, here in Jerusalem, and complained to him. He said to him, "What's the matter with me? All the time I can't breathe properly. What's the matter with me?" And the doctor, evidently, who was a Yoresh Shamayim, turned around and said to him, "Young boy," he said to him, "you are amazed why your breathing doesn't work. I don't believe why it does work. Why should you be able to breathe properly?" You know, it's incredible. And therefore, when you say that I can breathe, what an incredible miracle that is. It's not necessarily it's a normal thing to breathe. I can breathe. I can breathe in and out. No, it's a normal reaction. It's not a chassidus. It's not a piety. Let's move on a little bit. If you ever see a child, a little baby just born, a newborn, you take one look at the child. All the limbs are there. Baruch Hashem. Everything, the little fingernails, the little ankles, the eyes, the head, everything is there. It's very well done. It's a normal thing to say, Koil haneshama tahalilka. What an incredible creation comes out of a mother's womb, and you see a baby and the limbs are there. It's normal to appreciate. It's not a chassidus. Normal to appreciate. You look at a child who is born, then the child will grow up and all his features and his functions will work. It's an incredible. It's normal. It's not chassidus. Not chassidus. And therefore, we're coming on to a bracha of Haidah. The bracha of Haidah is not necessarily a great milah. It's a normal thing to do. No. There isn't one living creature who moves around who can take for granted using the bathroom. Everybody has to use the bathroom. Even an animal, a cat, a dog, a human being. No one can take, for example, for granted mafli lassos, to be able to use the bathroom. And therefore, asher yotzes odom b'chochma umafli lassos. It's an incredible wonder. It's not necessarily a trait of Hasidus. It's normal to appreciate that I can use the bathroom properly. We're not talking about great tzidkas here. We're talking about the normal thing to appreciate, to be able to use the bathroom properly. Rabbi say, look at the Almighty's catering. The catering is incredible. You want vegetables, you want fruit, you want grains, and any way you want to have it, however way you want to have it. And the food supply which the Almighty gives is remarkable, incredible. I've got a feeling that maybe Hashem had in mind, no, you can't argue about taste, how a person wants something. You want it fried, you want it cooked, you want it boiled, you want it raw as it is. However you want it, you can make it as whatever you want. His catering is unbelievable, and therefore, not a chassidus to turn around and say, "Hu hativ, hu meitiv, hu yetiv lanu, hu gamalanu, hu gamlein, hu gamleinu," that he's so good to us. It's not at all. It's a normal thing to recognize. You're given such beautiful food, and the choice and the selection is remarkable. His menu is unlimited, and the vastness of the food which you can eat. It's normal to bench properly. You know, it's not a chassidus now. This is the point I think which the Alter is saying. There isn't one person, I think, in the whole of the universe who doesn't stand there and admire and watch the brilliance of a sunrise or a sunset. No? It's not a great chassidus to turn around and say, the sun rises at the precise time, the precision of the time of the sunrise and sunset. It's a normal thing to do, to recognize the greatness of the Bria. It's normal. It's normal. A birchas haidah is a simple, a normal way of behaving, to recognize the beauty of it. Or you see some beautiful scene. You don't have to go to Niagara or the Grand Canyon to see something. I myself am so fortunate. I live in Mabat Bet Shemesh, and from my porch, from my mirpeset, I look out on the hills of Yerushalayim, and you see the green hills, and you see Gush Etzion. You see a beautiful Morabu Masech Hashem. No, it's normal. It's normal to appreciate something which is very well done. That's a normal way of behaving. It's not Hasidus at all. This is the point, I think, which the Alter is mentioning to us. A birchas haidah is a normal statement of affair. You recognize esteem and something which is excellent, well done. Maybe perhaps also on Leila Seder when you sit there, besides the thanks, just when you say, "V'hakodesh Baruch Hu matzilenu miyadam," He saved us. It was unbelievably well done. Each makkah which was brought from Dam, Tzvadea, Kinim, and Makkas Pachoyos, each one, it was very well done that we came out of Mitzrayim, B'Rechush Goda, with great property and with tremendous wealth. It was very well done. And therefore, there's no great trait of piety, I'm suggesting here. And therefore, when one comes to something of great esteem and excellence, it's normal to turn around and say, "Ki semachteni Hashem b'foalecha, b'masi yodecha aranein." Ribono shalom, ki semachte, I overjoiced, b'masi yodecha, with the acts of your hand. B'masi yodecha, with the actions of your hand, I am overjoyed. The Vilna Gaon, Rabbi says on that pasuk, "Ki semachti Hashem b'foalecha." A pu'ula is a halfway stage. A ma'aseh yodecha is a completion. Meaning, Ki simachti Hashem b'fo olecha, I rejoice the Almighty in the halfway stage. You put a seed in the ground, it begins to grow. When the tree comes out with great blossom and the fruit comes out, that's Masa Yodechem. When a lady becomes pregnant, that's Po'alecha, that's a halfway stage. When it eventually comes to when the child is born, then eventually B'Masa Yodecha Raneh. No, it's an incredible feat. When a couple maybe become a Chosen and Kala, that's a Pu'ula. When they get married and build a beautiful home, that's Masa Yodecha. Ki simachtani Hashem b'fo olecha, says the Vinogaon. I am overjoyed, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with a halfway stage. But Masa Yodecha, when something reaches completion, Aranein, I'm overjoyed. And that, I think, is the first point which the Alter is saying. It's normal behavior to appreciate something very well done. Now let's go on to the second trait, which the Alter says. It's normal to, let's go as on the same basis, move between Bein Adam Lachaveu, and then we'll move on Bein Adam Lamokim in the following way. And this is what the Alter is saying. I've taken the words of the Alter. If you want to look it up, it's in Chochma Musa, Chelek Beis, Maimah Tes Vov. You'll see it there. It's condensed much more, but I've opened it up because I found the Maimah so incredibly inspiring and motivating. I built up on the idea of what the Alter said. It's normal behavior to say thank you to somebody. It's abnormal not to say thank you. I remember a friend of mine, when I used to live in Haunof, told me the following incident. He was coming back from America, and the plane was delayed. And he arrived back at Ben Gurion Airport at 3 o'clock in the morning. And when he came out, he was so fortunate. His wife was there to meet him, and she was there to take him. As he came through the tunnel with his luggage, his wife turned around and mentioned, look, there's someone else coming out who lives on our street, who went over the taxi, and there were no taxis there. And he was completely bereft. He had nowhere getting home, nowhere at all. His wife turned around and said to him, listen, there's so-and-so who lives on our street. Why don't we give him a ride? There are no taxis. He was, sure. They took him. He took his bags and put in the back of the car and sat at the back of the car. The whole of the way, he didn't say anything at all. Eventually, they took him from door to door, from Ben Gurion right to his house, I think on Rechav Agassi, I think it was, in Hanof, where I used to live there. And he told me, he didn't tell me the name, but he told me this is what happened to me. At the end, when we took him straight to the door. He got out of the car, took his luggage out, slammed the door and went in the house and never said a word of thank you, not a word. And his wife turned around to him and said as follows, either that person has just suffered an enormous tzara, maybe someone just died, or he's not normal, it's abnormal. Not to say thank you to somebody, it's a normal reaction to say thank you. It's not chasidus, it's normal to appreciate something which is done for you, no? It's normal, I think, for a child to appreciate a parent of all that they've done. It's normal behavior, I would suggest also, Ben Adam Lachaveira, if a person recognizes and appreciates a Rebbe or a person who teaches you something. He's lifted you up, he's taken you somewhere in life, he's given you a certain mindset, he brought you into tshuva, whatever it is. It's normal to appreciate a Rebbe or a mentor that you have who's moved you on. It's not chasidus, it's recognition. There's a beautiful story told of Reb Shimon Schwab, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, the Rav of the Washington Heights community in New York. The following beautiful episode. He learned in the Mir Yeshiva, and it came to one Bein Azmanim, he explained, and he didn't have any money to go home. He went over to the Mashiach, the great Rabbi Alpren, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, and asked him for a loan, for Gemach. And Rabbi Alpren gave him a certain amount of money. As he was going out of the door, he turned around and said, thank you so much. And Rabbi Alpren said, no, you don't say thank you. For a loan, it's called ribis. You don't turn around to somebody who lends you something and say thank you. You don't say that. You just take it and walk away. Meaning you don't say thank you because there's an aspect of interest. The person receives something more when he gets the item back again. He learned his lesson. When it came to the following Zman, he gave the money back to Rabbi Alpren. A year or two later, the same thing happened again. He also needed a gemach. He came into Rabbi Alpren and asked him again for a gemach. And as he took the gemach, he walked out of the room. As he went out of the room, Rabbi Alpren called him, 1 minute, Shimon, come back. You didn't say thank you. He said, Rebbe, but last time when I took a loan from you, I said thank you and you told me I shouldn't say thank you. Rabbi Alpren, yes, of course, but there's something called showing your thanks, no? You don't say thank you, but show at least your appreciation. It's normal, said Rabbi Alpren, to show your appreciation. No, it's normal to show your appreciation. It's normal. If you've taken that point, now here's the launch. Now go Bein Adam Lamokim. What does it mean, Bein Adam Lamokim? What does it mean to show appreciation? Maybe in the following way. When you wake up in the morning and you say, Moidani lefanecha, she'achzarta bi nishmasi, bechemno, Rabbi Emunus, it's normal, Rabbi Isai, to turn around and say, Ribbonish, thank you for waking me up this morning. How many people didn't wake up this morning in the world? Thank you for giving me back. It's normal to say, thank you to Ribbonish Shalom. Thank you for all that you did. That's chastucha. There's a beautiful story told about Hagon Rebbe Eliashiv, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, the great posek here in Yerushalayim. At the end of his life, I think he was over 100, he had a severe heart problem, and they brought in a specialist from the Cleveland Clinic to do a certain very technical and intricate heart operation on Rabbi Yashiv. Unfortunately, it was very successful, and Rav lived, I think, 4 or 5 years afterwards. It was extremely successful. After a year or two, after the operation, the doctor came in to have a look at Rabbi Yashiv, and Rabbi Yashiv turned around to his grandson and said to him as follows: "I'd like you to do me a favor and tell me, how do I say thank you very much to the doctor when he comes to me?" And the grandson turned and said, "Zayda, but in 1 minute, you don't have to say, just say it in Hebrew and I will translate for you, or someone will translate for you." Rabbi Yashiv said, no, he said, "That's not good enough. That's not, I have to say the words myself." And he explained why. Listen to this beautiful point. The Abu Dram explains that when it comes to Chazor Sashatz, when we listen to the Shemini Esrei being repeated, the normal situation is after you hear the bracha, for example, you say Amen. After Shamei Tefillah, you say Amen. But there's one bracha in Chazor Sashatz that you do not say Amen. Moedim, when we say thank you. There's something called Moedim de Rabbanan. Why don't we just say after the bracha, Amen? Why do we have to say Moedim de Rabbanan? There's a special prayer which the congregations say called Moedim, because it's not enough to say Amen. When it comes to thank you, you have to say it yourself. Says Rabbi Yashiv, from there we learn, it's not enough for me just to have someone voice the words for me. I must say it myself. I must express my own thanks. I must say thank you to the doctor in my own words. It doesn't work if someone else says it for you. Isn't that a beautiful point? It's normal to turn around and say thank you to a person. Do you remember the beautiful episode which I think I mentioned at the beginning of the year? A marvelous episode about Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the son-in-law of Rabbi Yashiv. Evidently, every Friday, every Erev Shabbos, he would go around and visit his sister, who was an almana, a widow, who lived on Rehov Rashbam there in Bnei Brak. He would go and visit her every Erev Shabbos. One particular Erev Shabbos, he went in there, and as he went in there, he took his jacket off and gave his jacket to his sister, Rebbetzin Barzam. As he gave the jacket to his sister, the sister saw in the pocket a sandwich bag. She took the sandwich bag out and threw it in the garbage. And Reb Chaim said, no, please don't throw the sandwich bag, an empty small plastic bag. She said, "Oh, you don't need it?" He said, "I do need it." She pressed him and said, "Why do you need it? What do you need a plastic bag for in your pocket for?" And he turned around and said to her as follows. Listen to his beautiful words of the Odom Godel. He said, "I don't know if you remember, 20 years ago I had a stroke. I was unable to put my hand in my pocket. I couldn't put my hand in my pocket. But after the stroke, I recovered. I can now put my hand in my pocket. I kept there, for my own purposes, a reminder, a plastic bag, so I should never ever forget that I couldn't put my hand in my pocket. It's my own personal reminder. I don't want to ever forget. And therefore, every time I put my hand in, I feel the plastic bag and I remind myself, Rebbeinu Shalom, thank you. Thank you for what you've done. Ashir al Hashem ki gomal aloi, says the Vilna Gaon on those words. Is before something happened. Is during the actual test itself. I will sing to Hashem that He was kind to me 10 years later, 20 years later, 50 years later, to say thank you and remember that. It's normal. It's normal to say thank you. I think that's the point which we have. And that's the lesson which Reb Chaim is teaching us here. It's normal to say thank you, to appreciate all that's done for you. Thank you very much. Chastacha is your well-being to me and your benevolence to me is overwhelming. And that's the meaning of Chastacha there. Chastacha v'amitra. I don't know, Rabbi, so I'd like to suggest as follows. Today is Erev Shabbos. Tomorrow when we say Nishmas, I'd like to suggest when you say Nishmas, think of all the things that happened during the course of the week. Think of how many things could have happened and things could have gone wrong. And you say Nishmas, it's called Birkas Hashir. Say the words slowly. Say the words with intention. Say the words with thoughtfulness. You say these beautiful, that's a normal expression of thanks, I would suggest. And you come to these as Adheina Azarunu Rachamecha. Of all that you've helped me until now was your mercy. And you didn't leave us is your kindness. Please don't leave us ever. Normal, I'm suggesting, to say thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not necessarily a piety. And therefore, these are the two themes which the Alter brings out here in this point here. Chastacha, I appreciate all that you do. Amitra, it's very well done. Tommy Ditzruni will always guard me. And in reality, Rabbi says the authors, Haidu Lashem ki toiv. It's very well done. Ki l'olam chasto. And I appreciate all that you've done for me. And that's the nature of it. It's a normal expression of thanks. Haidu Lashem ki toiv, of all that you've done. I appreciate. It's very well done. It's excellent. The breathing is excellent. They can use the bathroom, the food, whatever you've done for me. It's normal to express the thanks. It's not a piety. Ki l'olam chasto. And to appreciate it all. It's very normal. Normal to appreciate something well done and also to say thank you for everything. There is a beautiful commentary on chapter 115 in Tehillim, Kus Tesla. We say it on Moshe Chodesh, we say it in Hallel. Listen to these beautiful words, which we say in Hallel. And the Meforshim explain that this Perek Kuf Tesvav is actually the appreciation of the thanks of Klal Yisrael to survive the Ikvsat Mashiach, all the period that we're going through, the time of great distress and hardship before the time of the Mashiach. And this is what we say, Loi lonu Hashem, it's not us, Loi lonu, it's not us, Ki l'shimcha, because of you, Tein kovod al chastecha ve'al amitecha, and your kindness and everything is so well done. And that's the expression of it. It's not us. We don't deserve any credit. It's all you, Hashem. And that's the nature of it. It's very well done, and we thank you and appreciate you all that you've done for us. That's the nature of it. I was thinking, as I was praying the Shir, perhaps even goes further than that. A person is not necessarily limited to Birchas Haidah. In the course of the day, if something happens, it's normal, I suppose, the term, Mizmor l'Seidah. Say chapter 100 of Tehillim at any time, or say, Hodul Hashem ki tov kila. Something happens to you, and you recognize it's Hashem who's behind it. It's very well done, and his benevolence and welfare was overwhelmingly kind. It's normal to say that. If that's the case, Rabbi say, here's the question which we must answer as follows. If, as the Alter is saying, that to recognize admiration and esteem something which is very well done, something professional which is very well, and to recognize kind, if it's normal, where is the midas chasidus which comes out? Where is the quality of piety and excellence which comes out? Where is the maila in a person? Where is the great quality of it? It's this, of course, as follows: that you don't mumble jumble or chant the brachas. You say it with meaning and understanding. When you say a bracha of thanks, I say it with meaning, I say it coherently, I say it with articulation, you say it with a passion, you say it with eloquence, you say it with great meaning. That is the nature of the Hasidus. To say a bracha of Zokev Kufim, it's normal to say Zokev, I can stand it, but how you say the bracha, that is the point here which we're bringing out, which is the crucial aspect of it. A Birchas Haidah, according to the Alter, is normal. How you say it and what you pack into it is great, is beautiful. When you say Asher Yotza, Chalulim, Mafli Lasso, it's incredible, the wonder behind it all. When you say it with meaning and great devotion and passion, then already it becomes a midas chasidus. It's normal to recognize something. Who hated will mate it. How you say the words is the point behind it all. If that's the case, maybe now we can go back to the sentence which we brought from chapter 40 in Tehillim. Ato Hashem lo sichla b'chamecha mimeni. Please, Hashem, never resist or hold back your mercy to me. Your kindness and your excellence will always guard me. This is what the meaning of the sentence is as follows. You take the last part of the sentence and then reflect it back in the first part of the sentence. Because at the end of the day, your kindness and your esteem and your admiration is so wonderful. It always guards me. I'm always held in line to be normal. It forces me to be normal. And therefore, since I'm normal, therefore, please do not resist your mercy from me. The end of the sentence reveals on the first, because I'm always normal, hopefully, because I always recognize things which are very well done and something which I appreciate. I'm an oirach toiv, I'm a good. If that's the case, therefore I can ask you, the Almighty, please never resist your mercy to me. And that's the point which we're bringing out. I think that's the nature of it. If that's the case, maybe we can make a certain siyum here, a certain analysis at the end of this year. We mentioned at the beginning there are three types of brachas. Something of birchas hanenin, which is said over food. You cannot eat something without making a bracha. We mentioned the previous shia last time. In order to eat something, otherwise you're chayav me'ila. You have no license to eat the food unless you make a bracha. Birchas ha-mitzvahs, you're obligated to say the mitzvah. You're obligated to say the bracha. You say Asher Kedushan mitzvah yourself. There's an obligation to say Asher Kedushan mitzvah b'tzibanu. And therefore, the first two brachas, meaning Birchas hanenin and Birchas ha-mitzvahs, are really an obligation on us. But Rabbi said, when it comes to Birchas Haidah, it's all the devotion, it's everything behind it all. It's all what you pack into it. How you say the Bach, how you say Shechion Avikiman, how you say Hagomel Chasim Tov, how you say Asher Yotza, how you say Hu Hativ Amit. It's the nature of saying it much more. Of course, with the other brachas as well, but it comes out so much more power behind it. When it's something like a Birchas Haidor, which is said with great thanks, it's normal to appreciate something well done. It's normal to express your appreciation, but it's more than that. When you put a pack into it and you put the eloquence and you articulate the words and you say it with emotion and you say it with a real thanks, then of course you come out to be a chassid and a tzaddik. I think that's the piety which comes out in it all. Maybe at the end of these shiurim, which we said, the first one was on Birchas HaMitzvahs, meaning Birchas HaNen and Birchas HaMitzvahs, and this one Birchas HaDor. Maybe we can ask a certain question. Go back to the incident which we brought right at the very beginning of these shiurim of the plague in the time of David HaMelech, and you have to say 100 brachas a day. But in another mimer of the Alter from Kam, he asks the following question, which is a beautiful point. We have in the Geder, in the aspect of halacha, of Jewish law, something called a klal and a prat, a general rule and a detail. A general rule means something which is generally explains a certain aspect of halacha. Detail are all the aspects inside the klal. Meaning, in reality, the general rule is made up of all the details which go up in the klal. For example, if you know the laws of Shabbos, of Bishul, of cooking, that's an av malacha. Then you have Todah, subcategories. All the details make up the klal. If that's the case, asks the Alter from Kelm a beautiful question. If we have something called a klal and a prat, in reality, why is it necessary, asks the Alter, to say 100 brachas a day? Surely you can get away with saying one bracha at the end of the beginning of the day, shahakonia, have a cup of coffee, you say shahakonia, and the klal is, the general rule is, it's enough, because I've covered everything. Shahakonia bidvara, everything is according to his license, to his word. Therefore, I've covered the bathroom, I've covered a cup of coffee, I've covered whatever, a mitzvah, shahakonia bidvara. Surely the general rule is enough. And the answer which the Alter gives, I've taken it and used the moshel to my own purposes, but really the basis of this moshel is the answer to the question, why a general rule is not enough every day. You must say 100 brachas, and one is not, even though the general rule includes all the details, it's not enough. Here's a moshel which I thought of. An Englishman and an American are flying into Heathrow Airport. And as they're coming down to land, the American turns around and says to the Englishman, you're English, are you? So you're English? And he turns around and says, a beautiful line, do you know the Queen? Americans ask this question, such a ridiculous question, do you know the Queen? So he says, no, I don't know the Queen. And then the American turns around and says this line, which often Americans say. They say that the Queen of England is very rich. So the Englishman says, yes, the Queen is very, very rich. So the American turns around, well, I am from Texas and I'm very, very rich indeed. So the Englishman turns around and says to him as follows. Listen, have you ever been to London before? He says, no, it's my first time visiting England. So I have a suggestion for you, he says to him. When you book into the hotel, after you've booked your clothing and you've booked your hotel room, take a taxi and go and visit something called Buckingham Palace. It's a magnificent palace in the centre of London. The grounds are phenomenal, and the building is an incredible palace there. Take a look and see Buckingham Palace. It's all owned by the Queen. Now, it's the King, but let's say we're the Queen. It's all owned by the Queen. There are no mortgage payments. She's not paying anything for rental there, nothing at all. It all belongs to her. Meg says, really, I see. And then he says to him, when you have a chance, go up to a place called Hampton Court or Windsor Castle. These are castles owned by the Queen in different places around England, around London. And they're beautiful castles of Balmoral in different parts of places around England. And the Queen owns all this property. And the Englishman turns around and says, it's all owned by the Queen. All these different properties, and they're fabulous places. Windsor Castle and the gardens and everything, and a magnificent castle. And then the Englishman turns around and says to the Texan as follows. And meanwhile, when you come back into London, go to a place called the Tower of London. In the Tower of London, you'll see all the crown jewels, and they're all owned by the Queen. I think they're all stolen property. I think the diamonds, were taken from India, whatever. Let's leave that aside for a moment. But it's all owned by the Queen. And then the Englishman turns around and says, by the way, when you walk around the City of London, you should know something. Most of the property around the City of London is owned by the Queen. It's the royal estate. The Texan then turns around and says, I see, I understand. So the Englishman says, you realize the Queen is more than just very rich. She's fabulously rich. And the Texan turns around and says, yes, I realize. The question is as follows. What would have happened if the Texan would have said, I am very, very, very rich? So the Englishman would have said, the Queen is very, very, five varies. You don't get anywhere with the general rule. It's only when the American heard there's something called the Tower of London or Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle or the Royal Estate, then you suddenly suddenly realize, only by the details do you pick on the point. The detail is the intricate point. When you have the details, then you suddenly realize, when you put your head on the pillow at night and you say, all the details, it's not enough to say a shahakol at the beginning of the day. All the brachas that you've said, whether it's a birchas hanenin for food, whether it's a mitzvah, whether it's a praise, whatever it is, they all have to come together. You have to go through every single detail. The impact of Adon Olam Hashem Molach only comes out when you've gone through all the details. The details gives you the real impact, and that's why it's necessary to say the 100 brachas. Again, I should mention, women are not duty bound on the 100 brachas. Rav Auerbach and also Rav Rosner both said Zecher Tzadik Zichronim B'Vorcha. A woman is not, she doesn't have ma'av, she doesn't have talis or tefillin, but in reality, to say all your brachas, after you've said all your brachas, then you have the impact of who Aborei Olam is, who it is, who's behind it all. And that's the point. The detail will take you much further. Just as I'm saying that, I remember an incident that happened to me, how important the detail is. I was with a group of friends and we were in Amsterdam, and we were taken to a place called the Rijksmuseum, which is a fabulous museum where they have many of the original paintings of Rembrandt. And we were taken in a room, and I remember, and the room was an enormous room, maybe 10 yards wide, I don't know. And at the end of the room was an enormous picture by Rembrandt. I remember it was called The Night Watch. And I walked in with a group of friends. I stood there in front of the picture about 5 seconds and walked on. And the guide who was with us turned around and said, "Young man, sit down, sit down. You don't just look at the night watch for 5 seconds. Sit down and look at one particular corner. Look at one particular point of the painting, and you'll see how wonderful the painting is." I can still remember the face of the little boy who's looking up, a very sweet child, on the bottom left-hand corner of the painting. You look at one particular detail, you suddenly realize what a fact, and then you go to another detail, and I suddenly realize I don't really have much appreciation for art. It's only when you see the details of everything do you pick up the point clearly. I think Rabbi Alpren, that is the nature of every single bracha. When you have all the brachas coming together, then you suddenly realize Elokeinu melech ha'olam, who he is, who's behind it all. That's the point. The details are crucial, and that's the point which we must come to. I'd like to end maybe with a beautiful passage. Maybe another time we'll fill it out in more detail, but a beautiful passage in Tehillim, Perek Kaf Daled, which is said on Rosh Hashanah here, I know in Eretz Yisrael, L'Hashem ha'aretz u'meloya. You go through beautiful passages of the creation of the world. Miyaleh b'har Hashem u'miyokum b'mkoim kodshay. And then, Nekir chapayim u'velev. I don't want to go through all the paper, but there's one particular sentence which it struck my mind, and that is Yisa brocha means if a person searches for the Almighty. And really the chapter is talking about the person who's a ben aliyah, someone who wants to grow in Torah and mitzvah, someone who wants to achieve something and become motivated. Yisa brocha, he carries a brocha meis Hashem utzedakah melekei yishad. He becomes a brocha himself. Isn't that a beautiful thought? He carries a brocha. A person who's careful with his brochas, a person who has this stability, I'm suggesting, and the tranquility of saying a brocha, la'olam oideka, as we mentioned before. If you're ever thankful, if you can keep your brachas in mind and you say them carefully, and you become a bracha yourself, your life itself is a bracha. If you're careful with your brachas, you become a bracha. You carry the bracha, and that's the great merit of be careful with your brachas, if you say them with great care. I think that, Rabbi Isai, is really the stability which we can find. We have tremendous emotional overloading. There's tremendous tzara on one hand, and there's humble elation on the other hand, what's going on. From Sukkot to Simchas Torah, from the times which we're going through, the stress which we're going through. If you can always remember, in order that, and all that you do, of all that happens in your life, your neshama lo yidaim, it should never be numb, it should never be silent, it should never be dumb. I will always give praise for you. Meaning, if you can look after your brachas, whether it's a birchas hanenin, whether it's a birchas mitzvah, whether it's a birchas hador, and rather not just be normal, but say them with piety, with chasidus, and say it with eloquence and passion and expression, then you reach a point of Yisa brocha meis Hashem melekei yishar. Amen. Kein yehi ratzon.